I'd like to call this special meeting of the Facilities Committee to order. Our agenda is very short today, but we'll see how it goes. The first item is update on the recommendation to install solar panels on our school building. Dr. Adams.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. There have been several board meetings this week, so appreciate it. And this morning is a continuation of the discussion we had about potential putting solar panels on some of our school buildings. At one of the last meetings, we looked at a proposal from a firm, and subsequently, Mr. Lynch and Mr. Riddle have been following up with the Connecticut Green Bank. I want to welcome, I think, Alan this morning and Mackie seem to be on. So I welcome them. They are representatives from the Green Bank. They can certainly introduce themselves in their formal positions in a couple of minutes, so they'll walk us through. But I don't know if Michael, if you want to just sort of frame a couple of things, or otherwise just for the introduction this morning.
No, I'm on, yeah. Okay, so the Connecticut Green Bank is a quasi-government agency, which the program they have, it combines multiple solar projects in municipalities and school districts throughout the state of Connecticut into one large project. And they end up getting a better lending rate, a better ZREC rate from the state of Connecticut, and better pricing on the work being done. So all in all, you end up with contractors vetted. The project itself is all handled sort of like a turnkey operation. And so we met with technical representatives who work for the Green Bank as subcontractors, and we walked all the school buildings last week, all the roofs, and they're on board with our proposal to follow behind our roofing projects with the solar panels. So we get a new roof with new solar panels on it. The plan calls for, what we're hoping for is 2 roofs being done this summer, 2 solar panel installations being done in the fall, and then next year doing solar panels on Oxbridge in the summer of 22, and in the fall of 22 doing solar panels on the roof at Royal. And, that's where we are. The town of Darien used the Green Bank. Not this program, they didn't have this program at that time, but the town used the Green Bank when they did their RFP a few years back.
I think Fiona has joined us too, so I'll say, Mr. Chairman, just good morning to Mackie, Alan, and Fiona, and with your permission, I'll just turn the floor over. So I don't know who's going to take a lead. Rumor has it as Fiona, but I don't know if that's true or not. So good morning and welcome. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for having us. This is Mackie Dykes. I'm the Vice President of Financing Programs with the Connecticut Green Bank. I'll be taking the lead on today's presentation. I've got, as you just acknowledged, Fiona Stewart from the Connecticut Green Bank, and Alan Sabins, who is the founding principal of CSW Energy. I do have a few slides which I can share. I see a computer or a screen in front of you. Are y'all able to see slides if I were to present?
Yes, we should be able to. Yes, sir.
Great. All right, let me give it a shot then. Great. Okay. You should be able to see a solar map slide.
Yes.
Great. Okay. So the Solar MAP program, Solar Municipal Assistance Program, it's a program started by the Green Bank. We're in our second year. The Connecticut Green Bank, as was just mentioned, we're a quasi-state agency that's focused on deploying clean energy into Connecticut. We work with homeowners, business owners, nonprofits, municipalities, schools, really any building that uses electricity. We've got a financing program to help them either generate clean energy or reduce their energy usage. We partnered with CSW Energy, selected them through a competitive RFP to offer the sort of expanded suite of services that we'll talk about today. We have we've worked since we started in 2012. We've worked with a number of municipalities and financed solar projects for them. And in doing so, and in talking with towns and boards of educations, it became clear that financing, while a barrier, was by no means the only barrier to going solar. That's often how you're going to pay for it is something that you encounter when you're well down the path of a solar project. There's a lot of things you got to figure out before that. Just basic feasibility. Is this building suitable for solar? How do I find a contractor? Typically, municipality or BOE needs to run an RFP. How do we pull together the resources to do that? And then how do we finance it and oversee the construction? So given our experience in deploying and financing all the solar projects we have in the state, we put together the Solar Map program to help towns with really the entire journey through a solar process. So starting sort of a step behind where we are today, where we have preliminary discussions about the program, and which results in just a list of property, just any building that you're interested in potentially exploring. We do a desktop review on those, so that's a sort of a virtual assessment to make sure there's no clear impediments to going solar. Heavily wooded or heavily treed, shaded around the building, too many obstructions on the roof, things like that. Provided there's no issues there, and based on the results of a conversation with the BOE on what we found for that virtual assessment, things like roof age, things like that, we would then get on site, which we're in the process of doing now with you, and walk the sites and use the information we develop there or get there to develop actual project proposals. That's the layout of the systems. That's what you can anticipate the solar system to generate in a year. So how much of your electricity you're going to displace from buying from the utility. And at that point, if you're on board with the preliminary proposals, we would go out and secure the incentives for the projects. These are necessary incentives to make the sort of the economics work, and then run an RFP for the construction of the project. Once we have all those actual project details, incentive amount, cost of the system, we come back to you with an agreement to move forward with the project. This is actually the where you would commit. Prior to this, there's no actual commitment to moving forward. It's at this point that we would have final numbers for what your savings would look like and what the power purchase cost would be. We'll get into that in just a minute, sort of the structure of this. But at that point, you'd be committing to move forward with the project, and we would begin the actual development and construction of the project. So the structure for doing these projects is a power purchase agreement. This, rather than the BOE purchasing the system yourself, the Green Bank actually buys the system. We pay the contractor that we select through the RFP to build the system, front 100% of the cost, and we sell you the power from the system. And we're the owner of us and our partners are the owner of the system throughout the 20-year term of the power purchase agreement. So why do you do it this way as opposed to buying it? The best or the biggest reason is because of the savings you realize because of it. Right now you're paying an energy bill for each of these buildings. After you do the solar project, you'll still have an energy bill. It'll just be much smaller than it was before because you're buying less electricity from the utility. Instead, you're purchasing power from us, from the solar system, and that power is cheaper than your electricity from the utility. So when you put the two payments together, your new energy bill plus the solar PPA bill, you're paying less to power that building than you were paying before the solar project. That's not the only benefit though. we're able, through this structure, we partner with private investors to monetize federal tax credits that are available that you as a municipal, organization would not be able to capture on your own. So that money is not left on the table when we do a solar project through this structure. And it's a significant amount of incentive. You also don't have to worry about the operations and maintenance. We're the owner of the system, so we're responsible for all that upkeep. And the incentives are aligned to make sure that we're doing a good job with that, because you only pay for the power that the system produces. So we're making the upfront investment in the system, and we only get paid back if it produces as we all expected. So, like I said, we are watching it closely, and we're incentivized to make sure that it is up and running. And as I mentioned before, you're not responsible for any of the upfront capital cost. We front 100% of that, and the only cost to you is the purchase of the power, which again, that's discounted to what you would have been spending anyway to buy the electricity. I'll pause here. This is a case study with Coventry, where we've done a number of projects there. I just ran through a lot on the program overview and the structure. So let me pause for any questions there before moving on to the next part of the presentation.
I don't want to jump the gun because it's probably part of the presentation, but this sounds like a buy versus lease kind of analysis, and maybe I just simplified it down to basic finance, but what is the argument for the district not to build its own, finance it through taxpayer dollars, build its own, and then, basically take, the Connecticut Green Bank out of the equation? And again, we might not have the expertise, and that might be the answer, but I would like to hear from Mike first.
From our point of view, the big benefit for a corporation is the taxes, the tax write-off, tax incentives. We don't get them as a municipality, so we would end up spending more to put the panels in and maintaining them than they would generate for us for electricity. We would never see a profit.
And then if you had anything else to answer, add.
Was that to me?
I'm sorry.
Yes. Okay. Great. Yeah. That's the. Mike's correct. That's the key reason that most municipalities or BOEs go through a PPA rather than purchasing the system. The economics are just better given the tax credits that are left on the table if you purchase it. The shifting of risk is another one. You're right. You're almost right that it's a buy versus lease, except a little sort of tweak on the lease, because typically a lease is fixed payments, but in this case, you're paying for performance. It's only if the system produces. So the risk of the project is shifted to us as the owner, since we're making the upfront investment, and you only pay for what's produced. We've seen, I should say, many, especially BOEs, we do see a lot of them buy the system themselves when they're building new buildings because of the school construction grant through the state. If you can get whatever, towns that have higher reimbursement rates, if the state's covering 75% of your system, then it makes sense to buy it economically. It's mainly free money. But even in those situations, we've run across through this program BOEs where essentially the system's sitting up there, they bought it, but it's not producing just because they don't have anyone who's paying close attention to it or has the expertise. But it comes down to that financial equation, which again, if you're going through the school construction program, it's worth a look at the numbers to buy it. But outside of that, it's typically better to do a power purchase agreement.
I think the tax credit, kind of is the answer right off the bat. So appreciate it, both of you. Thank you.
Okay. Great. I'll move on. Just real quick overview. The first round, as I mentioned, this is the second year we've run this program. We've financed systems for years. We work with dozens of municipalities. and own projects and BOEs that they have. But this is the first time we've run this, or the second time we've run this broader suite of services. Our first round, we worked with 5 municipalities, did 16 projects, and depending on the the PPA rate varies per project, but we delivered between a 22% and 59% discount from the utility rate for an overall savings of 4 million to these municipalities and BOEs. And again, one of the key benefits of the program, I mean, aside, you've got to make the lease versus purchase calculation, or the own versus PPA calculation. But assuming you go the PPA route, another benefit of this program is, as was mentioned earlier, the aggregation that we're able to do. For our first round, we had 5 municipalities. We're talking to well over a dozen municipalities and BOEs now. For the second round, we pull the projects together and are able to achieve cheaper construction costs for the projects than you would typically see, given that just the larger size and the economies of scale that these construction firms can realize with a bigger portfolio. So you can get typically a better deal through that strategy. But today we're going to go through we were given a large list of facilities. We did that desktop review, that virtual assessment that I talked about earlier. We'll go through what we found there. And then, as I mentioned, we're in the process of actually visiting these sites and putting together the proposals. So at some point in the near future, we'll come back to you with the actual project proposals and some very rough conservative numbers of the savings that you could expect to see. So for that, let me turn it over to Alan Sabins with CSW Energy to walk through this.
Thank you, Mackie. And thank you for taking the time for us to go through all of this. This is very exciting. So we originally received 8 sites that we performed a desktop review on. So what you have in front of you is an illustrative table of the results. So first column, you'll notice that there is the site name, which are all of the Board of Education schools, along with the site addresses. And as part of our desktop review, we look at a number of different softwares to determine the viability of a prospective solar installation. So I'll walk through each of the columns that are here in this table. So column number 1 is a question of whether or not the roof can handle a minimum system size of 50 kW. And then if that's a yes, we then move to the next column, which is identifying roof pitches, HVAC units, or any other scenarios that could inhibit a solar installation. Lastly, looking at the roof again, identifying if there is any shade impact, whether that be from trees, other buildings, parapet walls. And what you'll notice is the check boxes represent a yes. So out of the 8 sites that we were provided, 7 of which passed the desktop review. And then the last column on the right-hand side, we were also able to obtain the usage information for each of the facilities. And in reviewing those, we were able to identify and pass the usage review, which gave us the ability to hit that minimum system size of 50 kW. And I would just add to that, well, I guess we'll pause here to see if there are any questions. If not, we were then, from the point of the desktop review, we then narrowed the list down based on roof ages and things of that sort.
Okay, questions?
Yeah. When I look at this, you have a column, if the roof is not viable, any potential for ground mount or carport installation. So, I mean, looks like other than this building, well, we have all viable roofs. We have some shading at this central office building, but could you create carports for the use of solar panels and make it economically viable in addition to the roof?
Mackie,
It's-
do you wanna touch
Yeah, generally, carports are more expensive than a roof mounted system. As you can imagine, you've got to build the structure to support the solar panels. Um, right now, with commodities prices where they are, in particular steel, which is, I think it's up 300% in the last year. The carports, frankly, are challenging to make pencil. Again, you're already looking at them not having trouble us offering a competitive PPA rate. Right now, it's even tougher. It's so it's something we can look at for it's actually counterintuitively smaller systems, smaller carports can potentially be viable right now. The state incentivizes smaller systems higher than larger systems. So for this round, we've really only been looking at smaller carports. So if there's an interest there, we can try to see if there's enough space to fit in one of those smaller systems. And we can price it. I mean, there's no downside to trying. We can have an option with a carport and put it in the RFP, and we can have an option without it. And if the numbers don't work with the carport, then we can go all roof.
I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but if we're doing a large scale project throughout the town, it would be interesting at least to see the economics, whether or not it's feasible. Then putting my old P&Z hat on, we have to, see what's viable. But there might be a couple sites where it's not unsightly. It doesn't really encroach on any neighbors. And if the economics work, it might be something worth, unless I'm missing something, Mike or Alan.
Are you talking about the school site?
Yeah. Like, and I'm thinking about the
I hate
parking lot of the high school. I'm just making this up.
Personally, I hate them, but that's a different question, just aesthetically. But
Aesthetically, okay.
obviously,
But
you'll have to go through that as
Yeah.
part of the
because
question.
there are schools in the area that are using them. And again, only if it's economically viable and it makes sense, and then whether or not pass a smell test from a site.
Well, they had the discussion about carports with solar on top at Oxford.
Yep.
During the early stages of discussion.
Yeah.
And it was decided for a variety of reasons, appearance, aesthetic, et cetera, that, not needed. There was enough to gain off.
Okay. Or I guess the follow-up, could they be added incrementally at a later date into the system, on a feasible basis?
That would be a question for them.
Yeah.
Do you hear that, Becky?
Provided that, so if we were to do a rooftop now system now, provided that rooftop unit is, let me step back. You can't produce more solar power on site than you use in that building in a year. So as long as the first stage of the solar project, the rooftop is not doing that, it's not, there's still room left in the building usage, then yes, you could absolutely come back later and add a carport once, once steel prices have settled back to normal. And two, once everyone's gotten comfortable with the aesthetics of it.
And then I just have one more follow-up. On the central office building, the shading. I mean, were you talking one tree, or are you talking a line of trees? I guess.
So a line of trees,
Okay.
at least based on our
And there, also there's rooftop units with the gas main running down the middle of the roof. And there's 6 solar tube, natural light in the first floor. So there's a lot of obstructions on the roof. It would make it impossible to get any site system. We did walk the roof last Thursday. Just to confirm it was a pass fail. And those are the reasons, those are things we saw.
So maybe that last check on the central office building is like a half check or something.
That's right.
On the roof obstructions.
That's right.
Okay, thank you.
And I also understand that based on the roof walk, there was an offer and an accommodation to potentially move some of the conduit that's up there. So we're still trying to figure out how to make something happen there, but appreciate the offer to accommodate so that we can make something happen.
Okay, thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? Yeah, I just have one. Mackie, you just mentioned something about that the site can't use more than it uses. It can't produce more than it uses in a year. I thought the point was you sell it, you generate the electricity, and then you get a rebate. You can't go, obviously you're not going to go below zero, but you can't go and benefit 110% and only take 100.
That's right. You can take a credit to a certain degree, in the sense that, let's say during the summer when the school's empty, that's going to be the prime time for making the solar power. So you'll probably produce more in that period of time than you need to consume. So you're able to bank those that solar power, those credits on your electric bill. And then let's say in the winter or in the fall when the school is full and we don't have as much sunny days, or the days are shorter, you're not getting as much solar power to cover your full demand, you're able to pull those credits down. However, that ability to bank and pull down credits only works up to the point where that, as I mentioned, the solar is meeting up to 100% of your demand. Once you produce more than you need, you're able to credit it still, but at a much reduced cost. It's not at your retail rate of electricity, which you would have purchased it from. It's at the wholesale cost, it varies, but I mean, typically between 2 and 4 cents. So at that point, you're underwater. You're buying it for more than you're getting credit for. So we won't size the system to produce more than 85%, because we never want that to happen. Building demand profiles change over 20 years. Your building can become more efficient. You can have a really sunny year. We never want to have that scenario play out where you're underwater. So we cap it at 85%.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I think we can continue.
All set here, Mackie, if you want to.
Yeah, great. So in terms of the next steps, as I mentioned, we're very close to finalizing the project proposals, which we would bring back to you. And if everyone is on board with moving forward, we would ask you to sign a letter of intent with us. This is a non-binding agreement just to sort of, just lay out the basic terms of relationship and what the Green Bank's going to do from here on out. As I mentioned, this is non-binding, but we like to just have some sort of clear agreement in place about the expectations. Based on that, we would then go out and secure the incentives. We would run the RFP. Now we're getting into the fall of this year. And once we run that RFP, we'd be able to come back to you later this year in Q4 with an actual agreement. We'd have final cost, what the PPA rate would be. We'd be able to tell you, firmly what your savings would be over the term. And at that point, if you're ready to move forward, we'd sign everything and we'd get the project started next year. So again, today, really no commitment or anything. This is just an update, get some information from everyone, feedback. And again, if everyone's comfortable with the process, we'll keep moving forward and come back to you with the actual proposals.
Just a quick question on the build buy, and I know John touched on this earlier, and I understand that the tax incentives make a big difference in the economics. Is there any way you can give us a sense of that? Percentage-wise or scale-wise, just so we have that in our minds, or is that a lot of work for you guys to calculate?
No, it shouldn't. We can make some. So when we come back to you, we won't have the actual cost to build the systems, but we can make some assumptions that and build those into an analysis of a PPA versus buy. So you're able to do an apples to apples comparison.
That'd be very helpful.
Just for the federal tax credit is 26% of the overall cost. So let's say this is a $500,000 system. It is 130,000 that is left on the table in a buy scenario. But yeah, we can run the numbers for each of those when we come back to you.
Yeah, if we can have that in the packet, that'd be very helpful.
That's a very tall hurdle. And then
Okay,
just, we see this process here even from our side of things, Alan or Mike. So what's the process? This sounds like this committee would bring it forward to the board, but then after the board takes a look, what else do we need?
Yes, Maggie talked about the letter of intent. I will post this morning, but I'll just share what that letter of intent actually looks like. So you'll have a. Maggie, there's a deadline here in terms of the Xerox credits and stuff, and that needs to be met. Is that correct for us to meet the timeline? Can you just elaborate a bit on it?
Yep, that's correct. So the utility UI and Eversource are the ones who run the incentive program. They give these incentives out once a year, and that process of awarding them ends on June 14th. So we've got to have the project scoped and submitted by then. So we need if need be, understand that you've got meeting schedules. So if the LOI signing spills into June, that's okay. We've got a little time because June 14th is our deadline. But we do still need we need a few days just because there's the actual process of submitting. So we need a little time. But yeah, that's the actual deadline we're up against.
But the final commitment from a Board of Education would be contingent upon the full proposal that comes forward, right?
That's right. Yeah, you can sign the letter of intent. We can go out, run the RFP, get the incentives, come back to you with a PPA, and you can say, no, it's not enough savings. We don't want to move forward, and that's it. There's no cost or anything to you.
So just to be clear, the first deadline is June 14th to sign the letter of intent. You need it before then, I'm sorry.
We need it before then. Yeah, I mean, we say May here, so we tell everyone it's May 31st, but we could, understanding it's May 13th now, and this is just getting in front of you. We could spill a little bit into early June if need be.
I'd just be curious to know, in the LOI itself, is there any recourse or obligation on our part? Obviously, we wouldn't move forward if we weren't interested in doing it. That being said, I just would like to know what's in there if for whatever reason we wind up backing away. Obviously, good faith reason backing away.
You have I'm pulling up the actual agreement. You have the ability to, we're going off memory here, but there is the ability for you to terminate the LOI.
I don't need to read it right now. If just we could have that just in reviewing, that'd be very helpful.
Other questions?
So the 25th, Alan, do you have room in your meeting schedule to fit this in?
Yeah, it would be our intent. It would be our intent and hope to do that.
Okay.
Yes, I just want to make sure that Mike, that the board understands the routes that we're going to put them on. What this proposal sort of said. Could you just reiterate that again, because I just want to make sure that we're clear about that.
Yeah.
We've got these cleared for the district, but
The construction start Q1 2022 would be Holmes and Hindley. And then in the last quarter of 22 and first quarter of 23 would be Royal and Oxford.
And that would fit into any potential project we're working on.
Right, with
Yeah.
easy credit, yeah.
Yeah.
Once you're approved with this Eversource of the state, you have 18 months.
Okay. So you can fit that into a larger project.
Start the project,
Okay.
so we'll be in good shape.
And then staging per said project, since this is going to be Q1, school will be in session. Is that a weekend job? Is that something you can stage? I mean, solar panels are only 6 feet.
The crane on site and lifting the materials up on the roof, that would be done on weekend or after school. The actual work, that people would have either some scaffolding or some lifts set up, and they would just have a fenced off area that they would work out of and go from the ground up to the roof. Any work inside the building would be like a typical contractor, signing in, getting vetted through our database, ID tag, proper attire, et cetera. Yeah.
Okay.
Any other contractor.
So just to complete that last thought from me, actually, for my purposes, that the intent would be for the other buildings, when they come up in the capital project, all things being equal, to build it in, to
Yes.
to redo this again.
Yeah, when phase one of Ox Ridge is completed, it's being built with the infrastructure to support solar panels. And there's actually a drawing from SLAM showing the layout and the output of the solar panels on the roof of the building, taking into consideration shaded areas, the rooftop units, et cetera. Mackie and his team, they have that information. They have those drawings.
But high school, middle school took the years out.
They'll be
basically.
years out because of the ages of the roofs.
Perfect.
Questions?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
I'm good, thank you.
Are we happy to bring this to the board on
Absolutely.
I think so.
Tuesday?
Yes,
Okay, agreed.
agreed.
Mackie and your team there, thank you for your time this morning. We may ask you to join us at the board meeting next week if you are available. Fiona, thank you. We appreciate that. We appreciate the work you've done with the administrative team behind the scenes, and we look forward to moving forward with the project, hopefully.
Yes.
Great. Yeah, we're certainly happy to join on Tuesday. By that time, we would have also the actual project proposals, so can, share where we put the panels, production, how much we're offsetting and things like that. Just so you've got a little more info before you potentially sign the LOI.
Okay, I'm assuming that includes potentially the percentage of the actual usage we use for each building, right? Like how much of the percentage of electricity we're using for each building, how much these are actually offset percentage wise? Like we had the discussion about you can't go
Yes.
to 100%, but is it 80%, 50%, or?
Yeah, that's right. We'll have that by the next meeting.
Yep. Okay, good.
They already have all the information of our usage.
Yeah.
So they have the figures to work with.
Okay,
Well,
Great.
thank you.
thank you very much. Much appreciated for your time this morning. Thank you, sir.
Likewise.
Thank you.
Thanks all.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Our last item is public comment.
Good morning. Sorry. Good morning. If you would like to speak during public comment, please click the participants icon on the bottom of your Zoom screen. When it is your turn to speak, the facilitator will identify you and announce that you are unmuted for public comment. You will have up to 3 minutes to comment. There are no raised hands at this time.
Okay, thank you. Entertain. Yes, Mr. Seeley.
No, motion
Oh.
adjourned.
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Mr. Seeley, all in favor?